So this is what I'm working on right now, doing like an electronic kind of rock kind of thing here. So yeah, that's what I've got going on right now. I have not listened to this in the car yet, so I don't know if it's like perfect. The bass may be like a little too strong, but I kind of like it that way. So, you know, could just be a matter of taste. I've been really enjoying. I actually like laid out my mixer kind of like more intelligently this time around, where I actually like have buses and things like that, such that there's a lot of kind of like ear candy designed in this, where there's lots of low pass filters happening at various points. Let's see. So like that dip right there, where it kind of like comes out and comes back in. These little graphs down here are automations essentially, so that they are like turning these knobs down here. So like you can see the knob or my mouse. I can't remember if my mouse shows up in the recording or not, but yeah, those graphs basically control the knobs. It'll be more obvious on like this guy. Let's see. Or shoot, I forgot. It's not actually on the Massive X. It's on a Serum 2 FX module. Yeah. So you can see the knobs like going crazy down here because that's the automation is just like with the knobs. And something I love about Serum 2 is that it's a very visual synth, so it really gives you these like visual representations of what's happening. This comb filter here is what's kind of giving it that kind of like slightly detuned kind of sound to it. Oh, hold on, gotta enable these. That feeling where it just seems like it's kind of like going in and out of tune. Like, see if I'm bypassing it right now, so now nice steady tune. And then now it's got that kind of like wobble to it. And then the actual thing that's giving it the like the is just a low pass filter with a high resonance peak on it. That's a really super common like EDM tool essentially. One like kind of happy accident that I ended up using a lot is this lead here, like this like screechy like. The reverb on that was like insane, where it had this like crazy tail to it. So I actually ended up freezing the tail in just a sample like this, and then I would just kind of like throw it in random places throughout the song. It's like right here. So like that. That synth isn't playing at all, but I just took the tail and then reversed it and then unreversed it so that it would like lead into itself and do that effect here. That it's almost like feels almost like a Doppler effect or something. Like the synth is on like a speeding subway that's like flying past you. Minus like obviously Doppler effect has like the pitch going up and down, and the pitch is steady on this, but you know, similar concept. And for the chorus, I really wanted to do it like all synths, but I just was not able to like design a sound that had the intensity I wanted. So I did end up just having to use like guitars. But there are like just kind of a ridiculous amount of layers going on to give it that kind of like wall of sound effect. So that's like just the guitar by itself, and then there's a that's just a pretty basic arpeggio. About half the sounds in this I designed myself, and half I did actually just use presets. I used to have a really big like mindset about not wanting to ever use presets, but I've started to try and kind of like get over it a little bit, because obviously you can just be so much more productive if you're not like reinventing the wheel on every single thing. But like, well, so I'll cover the bass in a minute, but like this sound here, this is a Massive X preset, which I actually got Massive X for free. Native Instruments was like giving it out for like a day for free, and I managed to find it from Reddit, which is super sick. But there's some really good presets in it. So like that, like kind of like haunting atmospheric texture. I could probably design that sound myself if I really wanted to. It's not like, it doesn't sound like particularly difficult. Yeah. But then like that square arpeggio is actually something I made. Because stuff like that is pretty easy. So this is a square wave here. Square waves have that kind of like hollow sound to them. So like, let's see, Serum 2. So that's a saw wave. And that's a square wave. And saw waves and square waves are actually very similar harmonically. It's just a square wave. It's just like every harmonic that it takes to make a saw wave, if you remove half of them, like every other one, then it is a square wave. And they're literally shaped like what you see on the screen here with the square, or you know what looks like a sawtooth on like a saw blade. But yeah, squares are really good for doing. I feel like they almost have like a woodwind or like a whistly kind of like texture to them. But like I partially use like this volume envelope here to make it a little more plucky. Turned on the arpeggiator so that if you hit two notes at the same time, two or more notes at the same time, it'll like bounce back and forth, and you can tell it whether you want it to strum up or down or whichever direction you want. And then I think I probably did do some unison, which basically just copies that waveform. So it's playing that same waveform all at once, but they're all slightly in different pitches from each other, which creates what's called phase cancellation, so that there's kind of like a pulsating nature to it. It's like when you have a bunch of people singing the same notes together in a crowd, like they're not all going to be perfectly in pitch with each other. So when that happens, it creates a very full sound. It's kind of hard to describe, but then like this knob here, this detune knob, is controlling how out of pitch they are with each other. So when they're really close like that, they make some interesting kind of effects. And then let's see, another big trick is to create like an envelope. So these graphs are basically like automating the knob. So it's telling the knob, like, I want you to go from down here, and I want you to, you know, turn all the way up and then back down super quickly. And in this case, we're going to put that on like the pitch, so that, let's see. So that's a little too extreme. Because if you take the pitch and go like from high to low quickly, it produces that kind of like kind of effect. Very similar to like a drum. That still doesn't feel right. Oh shoot. There we go. I didn't have it quite aggressive enough. Oh man, I've never noticed that before. If you look at the vector scope down here, hopefully it's visible. That looks super sick. The left and right ear like profile for like this sound currently is doing some interesting stuff, and then you can basically apply the exact same like envelope to like a low pass filter, which this filter here is basically going to sweep through and cut off all the like from high to low, cut those frequencies off. But if you have it accentuate a peak of frequencies as it's sweeping down, it also creates kind of like a kind of like effect. So you can see like it's getting pretty close to that like plucky thing I had before, and then you just throw, you know, a bunch of delay and reverb and all that fun stuff. Yeah, you just... Man, that really does make a really cool... That makes a really cool drawing on the vector scope. I don't know why I never noticed that before. I must have never soloed it. What does this do? I guess this must have too much, this might have like a hyper dimension expander effect applied to it that would kind of muddy up. Yeah, it has a hyper dimension on it. So it does kind of muddy up slightly the appearance of it. The screechy guy here, I did design that sound as well. That one's pretty simple. It's just a saw wave. like 99% of all sounds like ever that you hear in music, especially like pop music and stuff, are just saw waves. They're just like a super harmonically dense waveform. So like just everything just kind of sounds good with them. They sound very full. Like when you have, and then when you do that unison effect where you're duplicating the waveform but slightly detuning each one, it creates that effect that, like I said, is extremely common in like all music. You know, whether it's like a low like that, you know. You know, that's obviously extremely common in like EDM and things like that, where, you know, you have your like, especially like drum and bass and stuff, having like, it's called like a Reese or whatever, just having that detuned low saw wave kind of like sliding up and down in random pitches. But yeah, it's extremely versatile. And then the more harmonics that it has, the more kind of room you have to use a filter to cut out or accentuate those harmonics. In order to make interesting sounds. But for the high lead, you know, it's basically just a saw with unison on it, and then like a bunch of like delays and other stuff. I can't remember what all I did to it. So we've got the hyperdimension is kind of like its own version of unison, basically, and the dimension is like a slight delay on the left and right channel to create a perception of more wideness, essentially. And then the distortion, there's a little bit of a bit crusher applied to it, I guess, which kind of gives it this like old-timey, like low fidelity kind of quality to it. And then convolution reverb, which is complicated. I won't get into that. Delay, equalizer, phaser. Phasers are interesting. They're almost just kind of like automated EQs, but yeah. Compressor and more reverb. And then probably the last interesting thing happening in this song is that is a synth I did design. So it's using a lot of what's called like frequency modulation. So you're basically like affecting the pitch of one waveform by the pitch of another waveform, and in this case I'm like FMing like, I thought 3 times, but I guess not, huh? Or no, I am, because this oscillator A is being FM'd from oscillator B, and then oscillator C is being FM'd from oscillator B. And yeah, so they're all kind of like affecting each other, but it creates, it's really good for like kind of like grindy, crazy sounds. Frequency modulation is kind of like the secret sauce to a lot of your classic like dubstep sounds. But so if you're trying to make a bass that's got a lot of like really grindy textures to it, it's wonderful for that. This ancient synthesizer, this is actually a reskin of it. It used to look like way more like Windows 3.1 janky, but this guy is like so great for making those kind of like crazy dubstep wub wub like kind of things. Let's see. It's been a while since I've made one of these. Hold on. I think it's a sign by a saw by a sign. I can never remember which. If you add like if I was playing a lower note. Yeah, it's a lot of experimenting, but But yeah, these FM synths, some like the crazier like dubstep sounds are made using that. Because then if you apply like sometimes it can be a very like messy, unmanageable sound. But then if you were to put another like filter over the top of it, that is kind of like cutting out a lot of the craziness, then it can sound a lot more manageable and sound more interesting. So, just adding like more effects and things like that can make it, usable. That would have been an acceptable dubstep wub in 2005 or 10 or whatever. But anyway, yeah. So I enjoy still like experimenting with those things in order to make different interesting grindy bass sounds and whatnot. Oh, this one. So this the sub for 90% of the song, especially like the verse. So let's see here. So like around here. For one thing, check out the spectrograph or vector scope, sorry, for, where's the sub? Synth bass, here we go. I think it looks super cool. The way it like changes shape every time it like changes to a new note, I find that super interesting. But so that is, it's like 50-50 where it was a preset, but I had to do a lot of work to it myself to actually make it usable. So by itself, this is the preset here. And you can see from like the oscilloscope that it's almost like a pure sine wave, which means that you're not going to hear this on cell phone speakers like at all, which is how a lot of people end up listening to music. You have to be able to add some sort of like higher frequency content to the sub to make it actually come through on cell phone speakers. So I'm using the Sinefold type of distortion in Serum 2. Serum 2 can both be a synthesizer that makes noises as well as an effects module where any of the effects that you could apply to any synths made in Serum, you can also apply to anything else, which is why this is like my favorite thing ever. But yeah, so this is without it, and then so you can also see on this visualizer here, I'm not sure what's going to be easiest to look at it on, but you see how there's like nothing up in the top part here, and then once I turn this on, now you can see it's still faint, but you can see a lot more frequency activity happening in the medium and even high frequency areas with that type of distortion applied to it. Yeah, in a way it's almost too successful because adding high frequency content, because I am actually cutting some of it back out again with another EQ, because otherwise it does get a little unmanageable. But yeah, like I said, that was a preset for Massive for the bass, but it just wasn't quite like punchy enough, and I knew it wasn't going to come through on cell speakers. So yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. Like I said, because I routed the everything through buses the way I did, it was possible. For the most part, I have everything routing through this melodic high pass bus here, so I can go ahead and cut out any low frequencies to make sure that the sub and like bass guitar are gonna punch through anything else that's in the mix. But then it makes it so I still have the option to bypass that if I want to, like the screechy like echo things, like these guys. These guys I actually already have bypassing that, partially because they already like don't really have, I don't think they have that much low frequency stuff going on anyway, not enough to interfere with anything. But yeah, I am using sidechain compression for like the drums. I'm really happy. I've started using Superior Drummer, and I've been loving how the drums sound now. There's just so many like really awesome effects modules inside of Superior Drummer that I finally started messing around with. So like the snare on this guy, I love all of that, and I just did that by like adding some of these tape simulator, I guess, and tape delay. I can't remember everything I added to it, but it's right here. But yeah, it has this ability to do like a full-on mixer inside of it with like really decent effects. Um, but then this song like is very like busy. There's a lot of like competing elements in it. And the trick in EDM music, at least, to get past that and still have your drums like cut through, is to literally just like duck the volume of the entire song except for the drums. So basically, what this does, go to the chorus because that's where the effect is going to be the strongest. So these lines that you see right here, these little like triangles that are being cut in, that is where it's detecting. I have the drums sidechained to this mixer track so that when it detects the volume of the drums increasing, it's going to go ahead and decrease the volume of everything else. And by doing that, like by timing them the exact same, so the volume on this is guitars are going to drop out when the drums hit. It really allows the drums to punch through without having to like, butcher the EQing of the guitar and things like that. Yeah. Something I love about FL is maybe like 3 to 5 years ago, they started vectorizing all their plugins. So now everything is infinitely scalable. So I can make this as big as I want to. And now it's like really easy to get like a really up close image to identify, what's going on. Technically, if you see a bunch of these like little like lines kind of jaggedy next to each other, it at least means there's potential for artifacting to be happening with the compressor. But personally, I don't hear it. Maybe it is, but either way, it's supposed to be something you're supposed to watch out for, but I didn't really notice a problem with it. But yeah, I look forward to giving it a car test. Hopefully it sounds as good there as it does to me right now. But I'm pretty happy, especially with the verse. Like that, I could listen to that for like hours. I'm so happy with it. Chorus, like, I think it gets the job done. I think it'll be really cool once it has vocals on top of it. But yeah, thanks for listening to me ramble for a while there. But bye.